Hey everybody, so today I'm going to do a quick camera comparison between the Oppo R15 Pro and the Vivo X21. So the reason I'm comparing these two phones are because they look very similar. So the reason they look similar is because they are actually owned by the same dude. So the same company, parent company BKK Electronics, actually owns Oppo, Vivo, and OnePlus. So that's why all the phones look so similar. Now I know people inside both companies. Actually, I know people inside all three companies, and I can say that they do operate independently, so it's not like the reason they're different branding is not like some kind of scam. They are kind of different companies with different CEOs and different management, so that explains why they do things so differently in terms of software and marketing. Like OnePlus, for example, it's very international. You know, it caters to like a Western English-speaking audience. It has a software that's very clean, stock Android, whereas Oppo and Vivo have these kind of crazy Chinese skins. And you know, you follow smartphone news, you know Vivo, they're a lot more aggressive at chasing trends in that, you know, like the under-screen fingerprint reader. So they're the first to adopt that, and the Vivo Apex, you know, it's a really cool concept device that they introduced at MWC, and it was like the talk of the event. Now, Vivo's actually going to release a phone like the Apex soon. I already have been told that I'm going to get my hands on the phone in a couple of weeks, so please stay tuned to my channel if you want to check that out. Meanwhile, Oppo plays it safe out of the three, but I kind of like that actually. So that explains why I like the Oppo R15 Pro a little more than the Vivo X21, because I find the X21's under-screen fingerprint reader a little bit gimmicky. It actually doesn't really work that well. It's a little bit slow. But we're not talking about that. So anyway, let's talk about the cameras. There are some drastic hardware differences that we have to address. The Oppo R15 Pro has a 16 megapixel main sensor with a f1.7 aperture paired with a 20 megapixel telephoto lens, also at f1.7 aperture. On the front of the phone, you have a 20 megapixel f2.0 selfie lens. So these are very impressive hardcore specs. On the Vivo, the specs aren't as impressive, at least by the numbers. You have a 12 megapixel main shooter with an f1.8 aperture, and then the secondary lens is only a 5 megapixel camera compared to the 20 megapixel camera on the Oppo R15 Pro. And in terms of selfie, the Vivo X21 has a 12 megapixel selfie camera. So the R15 Pro has a superior camera specs across the board, including that whopping 20 megapixel telephoto lens that should give it a much better zoom than Vivo's phone. So now looking at both phones' software, they're very similar for the most part. Both have sliding interfaces that have you swiping left to right, like you're on Tinder. Swipe left to right to change modes. You'll notice right off the bat that the R15 Pro has a button for 2x zoom, while the X21 doesn't have that button. This makes sense because Oppo's phone has a 20 megapixel telephoto lens which helps you zoom in at lossless quality. But then if you actually look at both shots taking a 2x zoom on a phone, you really can't see a difference. It's only when you look closer, like blow up the pictures on a computer monitor, are you able to see that Oppo's image actually does have a slightly more details and just a little bit more clearer image. So now back to the software. There are more subtle differences between the two phones. For example, you see it on the Vivo X21, the camera app has this filter button down the lower right corner that you can press into it and then you choose from all these different filters. On the Oppo R15 Pro, you don't get filters for the main camera, but instead you get filters in portrait mode. So this is like a rip-off of the iPhone X portrait lighting. I personally don't think it's that good, so I wouldn't use it. Another difference, and this is a big one, is that Vivo's camera software lets me go into the camera settings from within the camera app directly, whereas on Oppo, you can't get into the camera settings from within the app. You have to go to the phone's main settings just to change things like shooting resolution and all that. So that's very damn annoying. Okay, now back to the main camera performance. I find that both cameras produce quite similar shots in the daytime, although Vivo's image processing is noticeably warmer with more contrast. But because the R15 Pro's camera has a lower f-stop, that means it lets in more light. You notice that the R15 Pro is just a better camera in low light situations. Check out this set of photos side by side. You see that Oppo's shot is a bit brighter, especially in that tunnel area. Likewise for dynamic range. Look at these two shots side by side, and you see that the R15 Pro has the superior dynamic range. But the Vivo X21 is better at bokeh shots. In multiple samples seen right here, I prefer Vivo's image almost every time. I think that's because the X21 uses its 5 megapixel lens for a depth sensor, like, you know, telling the subject from the background, whereas Oppo uses its second camera for zoom, so that's why I had a better zoom photo. Both phones can take selfies in portrait mode, and I think personally I prefer Vivo's rendition. I think it looks a little bit more natural. Oppo's shot does that beautifying thing that I don't really like. Now let's check out some videos. So both phones shoot in 720p natively, but you can go up to 1080p or 4K. We'll test the 4K first. So yeah, as you can see, they don't look that good. Details are very murky and there's no image stabilization whatsoever. Just not a good 4K video from either phones. But now if you go to 1080p, it's actually a little bit better. So both videos are a little bit better. I think the Snapdragon 660 just can't handle 4K image processing that well, but the Oppo R15 Pro's 1080p video is a little bit brighter than Vivo's 1080p video, so I think it's a little bit better. So overall, I think the Oppo R15 Pro is the better camera by a little bit. It shoots slightly better video, it's better in low light situation, and has better dynamic range, and you can zoom in 2 times. But the Vivo X21 wins in bokeh and selfies. And you know, those might be more important to some people, so it's really up to you. Personally, I like the Oppo R15 Pro a little bit better than the Vivo X21, not just as a camera, but as the whole package. Thanks for watching.